All right, we're looking at Lab 13, Exercise F. We'll be learning about weather stations and weather station symbols and how to read those symbols. There is supplemental reading in the lab module, so definitely take a look at that. But starting out, what is a weather station? Simply put, a weather station collects data so that we can understand local atmospheric conditions and compare them to other weather stations to see and predict weather patterns. Weather stations will monitor things like wind, rain, temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure, air pressure, and this is going to be indicated through different types of symbology. So importantly, we've looked at different types of labs where we've looked at different types of ISO lines, including isotherms, as well as isobars, right? That's the temperature and the air pressure changes. And so really, this type of information is provided to us through weather stations. And so when we're looking at this, each of these different types of symbols and symbology is going to represent the location of where a weather station is located, the information that it has collected regarding the local weather patterns, and when we combine all of this information on a larger scale, we can start to see weather patterns emerging over larger areas. And so, referring back to the previous video from Lab 12, this is also going to help show us where a cold front or a warm front is or is emerging. And this is all possible through the information collected by weather stations. And that is why we are looking at the symbology used to understand the weather conditions that are being collected here. So this may look a little confusing, but we're going to go ahead and break this down. So a weather station and weather station symbols use a very unique type of symbology. In addition to temperature, in addition to humidity, we are also going to be looking at wind direction and wind speed. And so I've more or less just blown this up for you and provided another example of specifically how we are going to look at wind speed. And in order to do that, we need to count the feathers that exist basically off the back of this little symbology. And so you can see here that the symbols are basically trying to show you that for a full line, this equals a 10 mile or 10 knots. A half line is 5 knots. And a full triangle, again, you can see that symbology in the back here, is going to be 50. And so depending on how many of these feathers and the type of feathers that is symbolized here, we can see how many knots the wind is blowing. So combining all of this, 50 plus 10 plus 10 plus 5 is going to give us a wind speed of 75 knots, while over here we have a 5 because it's a half feather and 2 10s, so that is going to be a wind speed of 25 knots. Importantly, to understand the symbologies or the symbology used for a weather map and the weather map symbols, you must flip to the back of your lab manuals. Starting on page 366, there is going to be a lot of information pertaining to the symbologies used on weather map symbols. So 366, 367, 368, and 369. On page 369, you'll find this image that is going to help us to determine and read these weather map symbols effectively. So these weather map symbols can actually tell us quite a bit of information. We have temperature, we can see our dew point, we can see the air pressure. This is sea level pressure measured in millibars. We talked about our little feathers. This is going to help us to indicate wind speed. The direction that this arm is pointing is going to be the direction that the wind is coming from. This is going to indicate the actual weather pattern that exists. And again, this type of symbol you can find on page 367 in the lab manual, where you're going to have to look at a variation of 99 different symbols to help determine what type of weather event or what type of weather is happening at the current moment, as well as the actual circle here is going to determine the type of sky cover. Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? Is it partially cloudy? So all of these different symbols, or basically this is going to be the entire symbol, and these different components are going to really paint the full picture of the local weather and all of the data that has been collected by this weather station. So again, figures 3-7, 3-4, and 3-3 on pages 366, 67, 68, and 69 is going to allow you to read this and figure out what the components or the individual weather components are. So let's go ahead and put this to the test. We are looking at the same symbology, and I have basically just given you this little breakdown so that you can figure out exactly what you need to do. And this is really what our lab's going to be based around. So use this as your initial practice problem. I want you to pause the video now and see if you can figure out what the weather pattern is, what is our wind direction, how fast is our wind speed, as well as what is our sky cover. Use the images in the back of the lab manual located here, and then let's see how you did once I go on to the next slide. So please pause the video now, see if you can figure this out, and then let's see how you did. All right, let's see how you did. So we can see that this is a range. We have a half feather and a full feather, so that is going to be 10 plus 5, 15 knots, and you'll see that in the back of the lab manual. That's actually going to provide you a range of 13 to 17 knots. Looking at the direction that this little arm is pointing, we can tell that the wind is coming from the north. And again, if we go never eat soggy waffles or never eat soggy wheat, whichever you prefer, that helps me to remember the direction that things are coming from. So we know this is west. So the wind direction is coming from the northwest. Looking at our actual weather event, you can see that once you've located those 3 dots, that is going to be that square number 63. And when you read that, it's continuous rain that is not freezing, and it is moderate at time of observation. So that is definitely what you have to locate, as well as turning to page 368 in order to determine what the sky cover is. We can see that the blank circle with no fill is no clouds. So this is the breakdown of how to read this weather symbology. Again, you have to use the back of the lab manual in order to decipher these symbologies, and that should be relatively straightforward. Again, if you're able to link the importance of this type of information so that you can put it into perspective and figure out how this type of weather symbols help to determine larger weather patterns that are taking place as a whole, that is, in essence, going above and beyond, which is fantastic. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, you can always reach me through Canvas inbox. And yeah, good luck.